Hi, folks. This is big for us here at Faith in Your Recovery, and we're glad you're alongside to experience it. It's going to be a little trial and error, but we feel comfortable with that. And we know we're going to get there, all right? Let me explain to you. You're going to have the chance to interact. You're going to have the chance to send us questions, and we're going to answer them here live on the air during our interview. So check it out. Follow us there with YouTube, Facebook, and then this will air this Friday. And as I said, this is our first time. It's experimental. We're excited about it. We're glad you're with us. Appreciate you being alongside. God bless.
Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Hey, the program's changed, but the process is still the same. So is our goal. We want to continue to talk about all things recovery. Yeah, that includes the battle of addiction. But we look beyond that. We're not going to focus on the problem. We're going to focus on the solution. Have a guest with us today. I want to go ahead and share with you the story of how this came to be and how Kaylyn's alongside here today for an interview, and then I'll introduce her here in just a moment. But today in our office in Red Key, Kaylyn came in kind of unannounced, but certainly welcome, and I hope she felt that way. But regardless, she talked about her work, and she had those feelings that we could come alongside each other and make a greater difference. And there's no doubt about it. I believe that. We're going to make that happen. But as we talked, I explained to her about our Faith in Your Recovery podcast, and she kind of perked up during that time, as you're going to find out. She's not shy, and we appreciate that. But as we talk more, I made mention to her that it felt awkward asking with such short notice, but we'd had a cancellation earlier today, and we were in search of an interview. How many times does God send somebody through your door 5 minutes after you find out you've had a cancellation? The floor is open, the seat is open, and somebody who's willing to fill it. We are thankful for that. Kaylyn, we look forward to hearing your story. Tell the folks a little about yourself, what life is, where you're from. Go ahead and share that with them.
First off, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. So like you said, my name's Kaylyn. I am from Muncie, raised there really. So my story, which we'll get into here in a moment, is my father is a recovering addict. My job works with individuals in addiction. And so I've always, even before my job, I've always had a draw toward Brianna's Hope. So it was a great feeling to, whenever I did come into the office, like you said, you hope I felt that way. I did. I walked in, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm interrupting stuff. And the moment I started talking, I'm like, this is where it's at. Like, I truly believe in what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And, I'm of the belief, as I've already said, and I believe I heard you say that earlier today, we can get a whole lot more done together than we can apart.
Yep.
What we can offer, you can, and vice versa. And that's what it's got to be about if we're going to have the impact we want to have. You briefly mentioned your dad's addiction.
Correct.
Tell us about that. Tell us how that's affected your life, perhaps other family members. I know you've checked on here that you've had mental health issues in the family, several traumatic experiences. Go ahead and open up your life to us, please.
Sure. So my dad has an addiction to pain pills. What started, and I'll be very transparent that I feel his story resonates with a lot of individuals in addiction, that his addiction started with doctors prescribing pain pills. And what he was a part of the era where they would just give you morphine. They would just give you Dilaudid, like a little bit of pain, here you go. So he had a back injury that warranted pain pills. So as he progressed, then came the era of doctors not giving pain pills as much as they did.
It just shut down there at
Yes,
a point.
it
Yes.
did. And I know I already said that, but I hear it so much in my heart because these individuals have a true diagnosis of pain. And then when the doctors just stop, it's like, what are they supposed to do? A lot of them are thrown into withdrawal. A lot of them, the mental health of you're dependent on a pain medicine, now you're not getting it. So he then spiraled into, I'll be very honest, I don't know if he ever did anything illicit. Just given his background, I wouldn't have put it past him, but I know that him and his significant other, my stepmom, they both had the pain pills even though they weren't prescribed to them. So as a child, I could see, like, I would see him taking the medicine, but it still didn't quite dawn on me that my father was an addict.
How old were you at that moment you're speaking of here? What was that age frame?
I would say that when I witnessed him taking pain medicine, but not quite realizing there's an issue, probably early teenager,
Okay.
maybe like 12. I started seeing my stepmom go downhill before I witnessed my dad go downhill. So I witnessed my stepmom just start looking bad. And it still, as a child, I didn't think, oh my gosh, they're using drugs. It was just like, something's wrong with my stepmom. And then when I was 16, I think actually, I know is when everything came to light. My stepmom died of an overdose. And my dad was the one who found her. And I was very aware of everything that had happened. They didn't hide anything from me. So at that point, I think it really hit me, oh my gosh, there's something more going on here. Um, so with my stepmom passing, that was a very traumatic experience. She was the first family member I've ever lost. So that affected school. It affected,
Of course.
opening up into the world of what drugs are. Um, and I'm thankful now, not obviously for her passing, but for that education of what this is. But when you're younger, it's a lot to take on.
Is that what has driven you to your profession today, do you believe?
Um, so I think my stepmom passing opened up the world of, because right around that age, I got into healthcare. I was a CNA when I was 16, so I've been working in healthcare for almost 20 years. So I do think it was the drive of helping people. Um, so early on, I wanted to be a nurse, and I was like, oh, I want to do all this, but that feeling wasn't quite fulfillment of, okay, I'm really helping people, but it wasn't filling. So then with my dad and me eye opening to he has an addiction, I truly feel that set a foundation for where I am today, helping individuals who live with substance use disorder. So yeah, because now in my job, I get that fulfilling of people are able to live their lives, how they choose. And I just have a small piece of that, a small part of that. And that's incredibly rewarding.
Do you have a special affinity for the children of addicts and strugglers?
I do, because I know as a mom myself, it's that you constantly think about your kids and what are you doing, and it's going to shape them as adults. So I know when I work with people living with substance use disorder and I see on their face that, oh my gosh, my kids, my kids. As a mom, I feel for them. But then as a child of somebody living, well, he's a recovering addict now, but, you know, I feel for them. And I think that helps drive that passion.
You can certainly relate to that
Correct.
child and the parents' feelings for that child,
Correct.
having been that child.
Right.
Yes, yes. All right. Are Do you have brothers, sisters who experience this as well, or are you an only child?
So I have a brother. He's 2 years older than me, and actually we never quite had a relationship. He was very close with my dad. Like he very much saw through what was going on with my dad. So as we got older and my dad moved up here about 2 years ago for me to be his caregiver because living with addiction had taken a toll on him physically and he was still as of 2 years ago in active addiction. My brother, we were able to come together as siblings, and he really leaned on me with, my knowledge of what's going on with dad, and so that really fostered a great relationship between
So you
us.
guys are closer now than you were at an earlier
Correct,
age.
than ever before. We're incredibly close.
You said your dad moved up here. Where from, may I ask?
Yeah, so he lived in Florida. And then my grandma, his mom was his caretaker. So I only got to speak with my grandma regarding how he was doing, and I would tell her like this is what addiction is and he fits the bill, but everybody was in denial of this is what's really going on with my dad. And I was the one who was trying to, let everybody know like, hey, we need to, get him help, but he wasn't ready for help. And that is very big even in my job to this day is if somebody doesn't want help, it's not going to help at all. And it's our job to love them, these individuals where they're at and make sure they're safe. So I was really hitting a wall because he didn't want help. My grandma was in denial. So when he moved up here almost 2 years ago, that's when it was like, okay,
That broke down the
oh,
walls
it
and
absolutely did.
said, I do have a problem. And
Yes.
everybody couldn't be in denial at that point. They had to see it.
Correct. So I'm, as everybody probably heard, and as you've known from the little short time I've known you, I'm a very vocal individual. So when he came up here and I was like, we really got to talk about this. And when he was up here, he was still in denial at the beginning and he overdosed twice. And it was during those overdoses that I went in and got him, with the ambulance and stuff. And I was like, "You need help. You're going to die." And at one point, he just looked at me and said, "Let me die." And that wasn't incredibly hard because what do you say to that? You know? What do you say to somebody? I mean, I believe in life and and I know there's a bigger purpose to things, but that really I almost want to say was a pivotal moment for his addiction. He had hit rock bottom. Like he just wanted to go, and I wasn't letting him.
That's about all you can do
Right.
at that moment is fight as hard as you can for them.
Right.
But until they make the decision, they're going to remain where they are.
Correct.
Yeah, and I've seen that over the years, personal experiences, family experiences. What is the one word of advice one statement of advice you would give to families who have a loved one in addiction, but he or she has not stepped up and confessed that to themselves
Right.
or others?
Love them. Absolutely just love them. And that is, I think, in personal life, I think in this field we work in, is these people, humans, and they just need love. And I think with my dad, it was he just needed to know somebody was there. He didn't need anything fixed at that moment. He just needed somebody to know somebody was there.
I like that comment. He didn't need anything fixed
Right.
at the moment, as if we could do that.
Right.
Yeah, but the importance of knowing
Yeah.
someone is there,
Correct.
that there is a shoulder to lean on and somebody who's going to listen
Right.
and not judge you or condemn you,
Correct.
but support you to the best. And boy, it becomes a fine line between that and enabling. Yes.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you mentioned that because that is, and I know anybody who's as a family member to somebody or a close friend of somebody who's living with addiction, you hear those words. You don't want to enable somebody. And that causes anxiety all in itself because you want to help, but you don't want to enable. So how do you do that? So I just want everybody to know I see you. I see you with how hard that is because you want to help them, but you want to make sure that they take accountability and they, help themselves and you're not doing things to make them hurt themselves worse. And that's a very real anxiety with that balance. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
And that's very real all the way
Yeah.
through. And there's no true definition.
No.
We have these wonderful catchphrases for it, not to enable, not to
Correct.
do for them what they can do for
Absolutely.
themselves. Yeah, that's correct. But that's not all there is to it either.
Correct. And it's even in my field and I've gone through classes where in social work you have to empower somebody, to help make changes for themselves, but you can't fix them. And that goes back to the fixing because I am 100% a fixer. If I could just grab somebody's hand and just fix you, but like you said, there's nothing to fix. It is them wanting to be empowered in their own life, and so you have to make sure you're empowering them and not enabling them.
Yeah. You keep mentioning your field of work, and I realize we've got to dance around some things here. That's not an issue, but tell the folks in the best way you can. I know it's in the healthcare industry.
Correct.
Go ahead and explain to them what it is.
Yeah, so I work with individuals who live with substance use disorder. A part of my job is, and I always say, loving you where you're at. And I support sobriety and the recovery and understanding how hard it is and the many aspects that come with that. And the things we don't talk about. So certain diseases that come possibly with addiction, and how do we get treatment for that? How do we recover from that? Um,
There's
so
so much stigma and bias attached to that. Yes.
there is a huge stigma with certain infectious diseases. And I am so loud with it because I'm like, certain ones are so it's okay. It's okay to seek treatment. It's okay to seek medication or just support. And that goes back to loving where you're at. You're human, you deserve treatment, you deserve care. And yes, if I could just remove stigma, oh man, I would just take it and throw it away.
I wonder where we'd be today. I'd never thought of it in those words that you just mentioned. And if you could reach out and
Yeah.
remove it, where would we be as a culture, as a society,
Yeah.
as far as recovery goes? I think we'd be on top of it.
Oh my gosh. And yeah, and especially not only with certain infectious diseases, the stigma, but addiction in itself and recovery in itself. There's this huge stigma attached to that. And so some people feel ashamed to seek help and they feel, distrust in certain people. Are they going to judge me? What are they going to say? And a part of who I am and what I've learned to become in this field is to just stop and listen. I just need to listen to you. My job is not to judge you. It is not to give advice, unless they want it. It is just to listen to you.
You know what? I spent 40 years as a minister, okay, retired from that. You're talking about listening. There's nothing more powerful.
Absolutely.
It's not the words you speak back. It's the words you hear and allow them to express and then confirm that you heard.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree. It doesn't have to be your choice of lifestyle. It doesn't have to be how you would do it, because if I care about you, I want to know about you. I don't want to prove my point. I want to help you with your point,
Yep.
your struggle, your battle, your life to make that next best move. There's a lot of talk, I guess, in some circles reaches controversy about harm reduction.
Right.
Give us your thoughts there on harm reduction.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in harm reduction because the way I look at it, and you are spot on when you say there's controversy around it. Oh man, because I work out in the community. I hear all kinds of things. And it's to respect people's ideas behind it. But the way I come at it is you're human and you deserve to live. So while you make whatever choices you make, let me help you stay safe while you're making those choices, because I don't want you to die. I want you to live. And who knows, maybe a couple months down the road, couple weeks down the road, tomorrow, it may be a totally different story. So why should these choices you're making right now end your life? Or why should they put you at a higher risk of certain diseases because they're quote unquote a bad choice? Like that, I don't believe in that whatsoever. I believe you deserve a good life and a healthy life regardless of your choices.
For any of our listeners, go ahead and define your understanding of harm reduction.
It is to keep people safe while certain choices are being made.
We may not agree with their choices,
Correct.
but we agree we want them to live another day.
Exactly. And you're spot on, not only with that, but when you say, my job is not to agree with you, it's exactly how you led into harm reduction with that. I mean, I personally, and I'm very transparent with personally, I have not lived with addiction. So it's not to say my history means anything or my choices or my belief means anything. It's to make sure you are safe. That is all I care about. It is, again, to love you where you're at, let you know you are worth living, and then here's how I can do what I can do to help keep you safe.
Should harm reduction, the very bottom line of it, should it be abstinence in your mind? Is that the ultimate goal of harm reduction? Or is harm reduction kind of the AA theme of make it through another day?
It is not abstinent. It is education in my mind. It is, what can I do to help you? And maybe it is the AA, live another day, because who's to say what tomorrow will bring? We don't know that. So I'm very big into education. So a part of harm reduction that I believe in is, let me be very honest with you about certain things that nobody else is talking about, but it's going to keep you safe. And I've done that many times where somebody has, or they say something, and I'll kind of get a little quiet because I understand it might be a little controversial, but I'm like, hey, XYZ, and they look at me and they're mind blown. They're like, "That's a thing?" I'm like, "It's absolutely a thing." Like, "This will kill you." And so, I mean, just those open conversations to keep somebody safe. That's the goal.
Awesome. Awesome. Um, what changes have you seen in recovery over the past 10 years, 5, 10 years, as far as our work as a society? How have we bettered ourselves to help those in the middle of the struggle?
Yeah, I really like that question because I've seen changes, like movement toward us as a society being more accepting of individuals living in addiction and, living in recovery, and it's exciting to see that kind of stuff. The events that go on, and the events are just to be proud and support people who, just for living and, and doing the hard work that they're doing. But on the same page, we still have a long way to go with accepting individuals who are living in addiction. And I would say, because we support recovery, which is huge, and it takes so much hard work. But for somebody to get to recovery, we have to love them through addiction, or else chances are they're not going to make it to recovery. So I wish as a society we would do better with understanding somebody living with addiction.
Love them harder,
Yes.
as hard as it is to love
Yeah.
them, but
Yeah, they deserve it.
because we don't get it. And we would want the same love,
Absolutely.
the same respect if it was my battle.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah. So, along with that, what what do you see as our greatest need beside to love them through this
Right.
to get them there where they can reach that goal of that harm reduction, the education, the abstinence, however we want to label it?
So we need more, I I really don't like this term, but it's the best term coming to mind. More boots on the ground people. We need more people in the community as supporters, as whatever field you may be in, or volunteer to help individuals get to recovery. I personally witness a lot of barriers. People have a lot of, maybe it's something that's very easy to help them, and that's their only reason they're not in recovery, or maybe it's something else. We need more people coming together to help alleviate these barriers so people can, do what they want with their life, recovery, sobriety, whatever that looks like. We also need more peer recovery coaches. There is such a big need for that because, again, transparently, I have not lived with addiction. And I say that again, I say it a lot because nothing bothers me more than somebody like, oh, I understand. Oh, I know. Like, no, I do not know. I admire you for your strength and I've witnessed how hard this is for you. So, what we need is more people living in recovery to really help people living in addiction. Because and actually I just spoke with an individual who I always say like they don't see that light at the end of the tunnel. It's not there for them right now. So for me, I can be like, it's there, I just keep moving. But to actually have somebody who's been in this dark tunnel.
To say you've seen the light.
Exactly. And to tell them, hey, I'm on the other side of this, that moves mountains for somebody in addiction versus somebody like me who's not actually lived it. I've just witnessed it. So we need more peer recovery.
You know what? I can relate to every word you just spoke because I don't come from an addiction
Right.
background myself. I hear what you say. I feel at times almost a stigma and a bias against me
Right.
because I don't have that experience. So what am I doing even trying to tell you?
Right.
I'm very careful, and I wasn't
Mhm.
all my ministry years. I understand. No,
Yeah.
I can say I feel for you, I feel with you. I can't say I feel what you're feeling.
Exactly.
Now, some cases, yes, at least similarly. I too lost a parent through suicide, so I can relate. But what I felt when the same as what you felt, our dynamics were different. So all of that plays into it. But I think my strength has been I truly care. Uh, that individual matters. I love them. They're worthy
Yeah.
of life. If I didn't believe that, I shouldn't have been in ministry for 40 years, okay? So I battle with that and against that. Folks, if you have a question, let us know. Maybe you have one for Kaylyn here. We'd love to respond to it. So just stay tuned with that. Get it in here. We don't have a lot of time left. Kaylyn, what do we need to do as far as health care for those individuals struggling? What if money were no object,
Ooh, okay.
if effort and you had the team you wanted, you found them, what would it look like? What would you try to offer? Kind of a
Yeah.
fantasy thought.
Ooh, I love that because money is a huge thing in insurance and ugh. So let's talk about actual diseases. I think everybody, regardless of which in future talks we'll talk about that, but regardless of the addiction status, deserve treatment. Regardless of insurance, deserve treatment. And we're talking about for certain infectious diseases. Um, and then also, I've noticed a lot of people in recovery, which I want to walk a fine line here because I understand it's a little controversial, MAT programs. A lot of people don't have access to that because of insurance and because of funding.
Tell the folks what MAT programs are.
Sure, it's medication assisted treatment. So, and again, I want to respect not everybody agrees with it, but for certain individuals, it's how they maintain sobriety. And in my eyes, and this is purely my opinion on it, it is sobriety. So if that is how somebody maintains sobriety, they should be able to get it without worrying about how it's going to cost, because I believe that truly leads to relapse if they can't fund that.
Absolutely. Kaylyn, what role do you think faith plays in all of this?
So, going back to my personal experience with my dad, um the best I ever saw my dad, aside from this moment in time with being off pain pills, was when my dad found God. And it was incredible how I just knew he sounded different, and it was because he found church. He found a men's support group. He found, that support he was looking for, and he was reading the Bible, and it was so, because my dad was an atheist. So I still to this day do not know what caused him to walk into that church, but I can tell you my dad during that time was the dad I've always wanted, and so personally I've witnessed um my faith came from my grandma, and my grandma would always tell me, "You need to pray for your dad. Your dad is sick." And she would constantly tell me that. So I believe in prayer and the blessings, and so I mean that's just a personal.
Sure. Yeah. Did she have any idea how he was sick? Did she have a label for his sickness?
Oh yeah, like we all knew he was addicted, and
Okay.
yeah. So and
Maybe you said that in the beginning and I
right.
lost that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it was, she was always, he has a sickness.
What would
And
you say to her right now if she was here?
my grandma,
Yeah.
my grandma passed in 2020, but I really think my grandma would be incredibly proud of me for what I'm doing, and even being here right now talking on a faith-based podcast. She would be incredibly proud of me.
Amen. All right. Eric, I understand we've got a question over there. Would you go ahead and speak that out for us, please?
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's just a comment. Someone mentioned that they worked at a homeless shelter in Lafayette for 5 years, and harm reduction is the only thing that worked with the clients. They said it's not necessarily their choice, but it's what works for that person.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's, I think, a part of harm reduction in general is we may not agree with it, we may not understand it, but it's keeping them safe and it's keeping them protected until they can achieve recovery.
And I'll go one step beyond that and say I think that's recovery in general.
Yeah.
Your path looks this way and that way. My path looks another way. Somebody else's looks totally different. And what
Absolutely.
works for me doesn't necessarily work for you, and vice versa.
Absolutely.
But having the options available, if it works for you, work it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I really like that, because when I speak with individuals, I get that quite a bit, where it's like, oh, well, and the shame that I feel like they're feeling, again, because that's just what I pick up from talking to people in like a relapse, or in, a harm reduction. Well, they're doing this, and it's like, oh, well, I'm not in recovery. It's a part of recovery. You look a little different than the person next to you, but it's okay.
That's
You're
right.
human.
We don't all want to wear the same shirt or the same
Exactly.
lady's
Exactly.
top,
Exactly.
okay?
Yep.
We want to maintain that individuality, so we
Exactly. Makes them
encourage
human.
that and love them through it until
Right.
they can love themselves
Oh,
sometimes.
that's so true. That's very
So,
powerful.
as we start to wrap this up, the name of our podcast is Faith in Your Recovery. You touched on it, but what do those 4 words mean to you, Kaylyn?
I would say believing in yourself, and then believing in a higher power. So I've witnessed a lot of people who seek the support, through faith-based, and what that means to them, but also believing that they can do it, and supporting them and empowering them through recovery.
That's We'll accept that. I always like to ask that question. Never had the same answer twice
Right,
out of
yeah.
137 episodes. All right. And that's how broad and how big God is. My wife had read a story today that talks about the God that stretches.
Yeah.
And I love that visual. You know, what he did with the fish and the bread, he stretched it to where it was enough. What he does with a moment like we had in the office today with the cancellation, he brought you in, stretched it to this point. So it happens for all of us and in all of us. And I'm thankful for that. Is there anything you'd like to conclude with? Maybe something I didn't approach, something else you wanted to say?
Oh, just that I'm incredibly grateful for being here. I'm a huge believer in everything happens for a reason. So I think being here is meant to be.
I believe that.
Yeah, and I look forward to future talks.
Well, I know you're going to be back here in a few weeks.
Yes.
You're going to have your boss along
That's right.
with you.
Yes.
We'll talk a little more about the work side of things and
Right.
how that actually plays
excited.
out and
Yep.
some of what you guys can offer to those who are hunting for extra support as
Right.
far as recovery, and not just recovery from addiction, but health issues, mental issues, which all of it plays together so much.
That's right. Goes
W-
hand in hand, absolutely.
Yep. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time, Kaylyn. God bless in your personal life and your work life as well. We appreciate this time we've had with you. And folks, as we work with this new format, we invite you to continue to get us your questions. This is the way it's going to be from now on. This is live, but we'll make sure we drop the episode to where you can get it on any of the major podcast platforms this Friday morning. Hang in there. God bless. Stay in the battle.